Hi, everybody. This is Margarita Kiwis. I am your host on Solve for X, Solutions that Spark Change. My guests today are Salma Al Hariry, founder and CEO of aleUp Ventures, and Hala Gabr, partner and VP of aleUp Ventures. These two women are amazing. So I met Salma. She was actually an intern of mine about 8 years ago or so. Met her when she was doing her getting her degree at the Halt Business School in San Francisco. She is the visionary behind aleUp Ventures and the Vested Summit. She's a serial entrepreneur, a young Egyptian investor, a Silicon Valley veteran globetrotter between San Francisco and Cairo, who has a vision of building a more equitable, sustainable future for emerging world economies through exponential technologies by igniting the full power of its youth. Hala is a digital media engineer and interdisciplinary designer. She finds inspiration in a human state of becoming. Her interests include concept, experience, and system design aimed at developing projects in education, empowerment, behavioral change, and tech. So, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have both of you here. Um, I want you, first of all, two Egyptian women deciding to go into venture, deciding to go into startups. You're just going to do this in a region that is not particularly known to a lot of people as a hotbed of innovation. Salma, how did you get started on this journey?
Well, Margarita, as you said, it all started with me venturing out, trying to figure out who I am in my early 20s when I actually moved to Silicon Valley to do my master's. And I think to the young Egyptian inside of me with big dreams, but then also not really knowing what to expect. I went to the valley and I think I was so inspired. I think you know quite well that innovation is up in the air, as they say. I got to build myself a really large network of very exciting, inspiring young entrepreneurs that are actually really working on changing the world. And I think that the theme of changing the world has been something that popped up throughout my journey. I moved to the Valley right after the Egyptian Revolution, where there was a lot of talk about change. There was a lot of energy of change. The revolution has inspired a lot of young people to actually take back the power to inspire, to live an inspired life and actually align themselves with what they want to see in their future and align their work with what they want to see in the future. The population of the Middle East is actually, the majority of the population is actually under 30. And this makes it for a fantastic innovation hub. Also, we can export problems. And of course, that the mother of invention is problem. This is also a fantastic and exciting opportunity for untapped potential again for innovation and social innovations and what we call conscious tech. So back in the early back in 2016, I realized that the term social innovation has been really associated with a lot of the social enterprises, the ones that are making an impact, but not necessarily exponential impact. I think that big problems deserve exponential solutions as well. And this is, I think, where the mission of the lab, the Stanford Peace Innovation Lab, and ours actually joined in, and there came a need for a new term to be coined, where the use of exponential technologies could be deployed for something other than shopping and $700 juicers and all of these first world problems, I would say. But there are real problems in the world that need to be addressed. And there are also champions around the world that are trying to address them, and they need a podium. They need some help. They need the resources. And I think this is why we exist. figuring out who I really wanted to do, what I really wanted to do, and what my life purpose is, I really say that the work that we do right now isn't something that I call work. I think I call it my life's mission.
Yeah.
So that has really been the starting point for me.
If you could tell me a little bit more about what would be an example of conscious tech, and it's certainly as we move away from first world problems, and it's interesting because even for the first world, we have those problems as well. We just don't
Yes.
acknowledge it, right? We just don't name it that way. There are many places in the United States where people don't have, safe drinking water, right? But
Mhm.
we don't talk about it. We tend to ignore it. And I'm very curious about solutions that come from other parts of the world because if they can work in what would be perceived as much harsher environments, then that means they'll work anywhere, right? And so there's a
Mhm.
lot of potential for innovation there and really hacking business models and distribution and all these things, and a leapfrog opportunity as well. But tell me, especially in the MENA region, what do you see as the in terms of the opportunities for conscious tech and again concrete examples of that as well?
I think that there's a lot to be said about education, and especially in this part of the world. I think this is an area or a sector that I actually worked extensively in. When I was in the Valley, I was a part of a company that was doing education technologies, and at that time there was a lot of regulation around that. So actually, a lot of the technologies weren't that used. I think there's something to be said about education and the changes, especially after COVID this year. I think there was a lot of debate whether people should have laptops, bring your own laptop, or bring your own device, this kind of stuff. And there was a lot of debate around the world whether even technologies should be used in education, and that the schools are going away. But now when you have a school in your phone, you're really tapping into unlimited potential, because you're actually giving access to really what we call the bottom of the pyramid, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and giving access to Stanford like content, actually very cheaply, even sometimes free, to people that are sitting remotely. And that's what we've seen for Egypt and for the Middle East that has happened. Is I used to go on trainings right after I came back from the Valley, to remote areas in Egypt, and actually to educate the entrepreneurs. And to my surprise, there was a lot of talent, and they were so aware of Elon Musk and this and that and the business models,
Yeah,
and they were
yeah.
actually hacking in their bedrooms. And you can see it across borders. You can see it with education, with healthcare, with fintech, with um, what else, Hala? The agri business as well. There's just so much
Water
going
for
on in
sure.
the region. Water, yes, and
Yeah,
infrastructure.
yeah. And Hala, what about you?
So it all started, I think, 10 years ago when I graduated right away. I'm an engineer by education, and this is like really where I started off in work and everything. And I think back then I just felt that there was something missing in what I'm doing with tech. It was a little bit dry. There was a human element that was missing in it. I used to code all the time and work with robots and everything. And I am a people's person, and I love arts and I love design, and I think I was looking for some human interaction in that point. And I think throughout the way, I met Selma after I did my second master's. It was in design studies back then. And uh, I started off with her as an intern. Because like she's saying now, it's her life's mission. Back then, it felt like a life mission. Like she put up a post on Facebook just looking for heroes, superheroes of the world back then, and it so much resonated with me that I wanted to hop on even on an internship level at the time. So I started with Salma on this journey. It at that time it wasn't really. Um, there wasn't even a company back then. We started off as a research in the area, trying to figure out what the problems of the technology startups are, why they are not succeeding, or the growth is not as exponential as we would want them to be. And there are a lot of like talents out there that are really underdogs, like we like to call them. But at the end of the day, after this research, we started figuring out that, oh my God, there is a potential there, an opportunity to start a company, to bring in more resources to those underdogs of the emerging markets. And yeah, this is how we started off together, I suppose. And conscious tech, I suppose, also became our word. Salma, you can also introduce that later on, but I have more about this to
Yeah,
talk.
fantastic. When you talk about your journey and launching this category of conscious tech, what was it like when you were pitching VCs, and which ones did you pitch? Did you come back to the Valley and talk to the VCs here, or what does the venture community look like in MENA, and how receptive were they to these two young dynamic women?
I mean, it has been. I think it has been a journey of alignment. I think that there are some people that also aligned at heart with us and really felt the change and wanted to look into these ventures and startups, and wanted to give them a shot, and like the startup competition coming and checking them out and stuff. And there are others that just really don't understand what the hell we're talking about.
Yeah.
Also, this journey of the consciousness journey part is a feminine kind of energy. Let's call it. So it was really, and coming from two females as well into an investment male-dominated investment scene was not really the most easy. Let's say it was challenging. But I think, like Salma's saying, people started hearing us step by step, believing in us, and I suppose we're just sending out a different message out there than what is out there in the market, and that's why people are intrigued and they want to know more.
Yeah. So how many doors did you have to knock on, and how did you deal with rejection?
Oh my.
Last year on its own was something else. You can write a book.
About last year particularly. Yes.
I mean, part of it is like it's so important to normalize the struggle, right? Because you can read these articles about these successful entrepreneurs and Fast Company and, all the usual places, Wired Magazine, and you go like, oh, and they tend to gloss over how hard it was. And for women in particular, you need to know, like, look, this is what's going to happen, but don't give up,
Yes.
So
I mean, I remember last year after the summit, I think I took I still remember there's the dear friend that told me that I almost shut my phone off, and I was crying constantly for 2 weeks. So that kind of gives a bit of a feel of the kind of struggle that you go through. Is like, especially when like players come in and players go, and there are others that stand behind you no matter what. And Hala has been in their journey, and starting off with just being an intern and then now being actually a partner, it just shows that there are people that when they're aligned and they believe, they push things forward. And there are others that just don't get it and they drop out. And I think that that's okay for people to drop out. And when they drop out, you should allow them to drop out, because
absolutely.
Absolutely. And this natural filter is, I think that what we're doing is hard, and it comes with a lot of exponential growth on a personal level as well. So if you're not ready for this up battle hill, the uphill battle, then I think that you're just gonna fall, and it might actually be broken in pieces, and maybe even sometimes a little bit bitter and sour that, like, you weren't able to get those dreams of yours realized in the world. There is definitely a psychological price to entrepreneurship, and there's also a financial one. There's one that comes with the health and stuff like that. But if you really have the again, if you're really aligned with your purpose, then it just makes it so that, you know, every time you lose your way, you have to find back your North Star. So that becomes the circular point where you have to always look at, otherwise you just lose tracks. So we definitely have had a lot of closed doors, a lot of we've had a sponsor pull out last year, literally when I was on the way to the airport. So I was on the plane and he called and I couldn't pick up. And then they had in the contract my mom's number as a secondary number, my home number. And they called on the home phone and they told her, oh, we want to deliver some news, but we don't want to deliver it by email. We just want to deliver it in person. And they said, listen, we're pulling out. And we had already printed like their everything. I mean, the event was about to happen. So, and there's also like a lot of VCs that like don't even understand the language that we're even talking about. But I would say there was a lot more yeses than nos. And when we found no's in a direction early enough, we were always kind of like realigning to try to find more of the yeses and more of the people. And then those people actually were referrals. Like they were always referring other people that also were within the same, I would say, heart mind space.
And I want to add something as well, that Salma has always, like throughout this very struggling journey, she always asked the question of, if we are having a closed door, what is this trying to tell us? You know, like it's not closed door, then where it's unfortunate, but it is trying to direct us in another way somehow. So she was always trying to decipher, like, what is the message that I am being told, or I need to get from this situation. And surprisingly, and I always tell her this, she has surprised me more more and more as we go, and of how she realigns the whole organization in a direction that is most suitable at that point of time, and with the current resources that we have, of course, since like we're a startup, so we're always juggling with the minimal resources that we have. So I think just aligning is the key, and asking the question to yourself of where am I supposed to go next, given the current circumstances.
Yeah. No, that's it requires a very level head, Salma. So kudos to you for being able to stay grounded during that process. It's so easy to get thrown off your game, right? And at the same time, you need to be able to listen and say, okay, so is it the way I'm explaining it? Is it that I haven't been able to explain the value proposition well, or am I not quite connecting with their pain point? And it's always that market fit, what you're trying to do. And it's especially challenging when you're doing something that's brand new, right? So there's so much talk just to persuade people and just get them to be comfortable with this new concept, and they just have to sit with it. And sometimes years later they come around, but not the first time, because it's like, what you're doing. Even though people say they want to do things that are new and innovative, for the most part, people don't want to do anything that's new and innovative. That's my experience. They always go like, they want it new, but show me where it's been done for the last 10 years. Right.
That's exactly. And you asked the question, Margarita, how are the VCs like? And the main reason, that's exactly what they do. Is like, you know, they sit on panels and they say they want innovation, but at the end of the day, when they make board decisions and actually make investment committee decisions of where investments should be going, it's definitely not the innovation. It's definitely who has done this before, how has it worked, can we actually sell it fast and exit and get, you know, a return on investment that fast. And that's why a lot of our unicorns, or the exits that we've had in the region, have been mostly Souk being acquired by Amazon, and Kareem being acquired by Uber.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a lot of copycat innovations, and that's what they're after. It's Arabizing, localizing something that's already been done, rather than
Mm-hmm.
actually going and asking, where can we build from the point of strength? The questions that you ask with your methodology at the Peace Innovation Lab is basically uh, where can we actually add value, and what are the problems, and how can we build and design for a positive behavior that actually can
Mm-hmm.
create change. So that's kind of like the questions that we started to address, is the type of founders that we started to align with, also being able to like support those kind of like founders, because if they weren't finding any support, there was
Mm-hmm.
actually this was contributing to the highest brain drain, I would
Mm-hmm.
say, from the region. So a lot of people, after they reach a ceiling of support, of financing, of a lot of
Mm-hmm.
challenges, they tend to actually go outside, especially, I think I would say mostly Europe, that's actually having its um, arms wide open to innovators. And they tend to actually shift and work on something else completely, rather than really focusing on real world problems.
So tell me, how so if you go to the VCs in Cairo or in Qatar or UAE, they're going to say, I want a copycat because I want to de-risk it as much as possible. So give me the Egyptian version of Uber, or give me the Egyptian version of Airbnb, or the Egyptian version of DoorDash, or whatever, right? Um, so so clearly those VCs aren't quite ready. So um, how are you getting funding for these companies? What is the clever hack that you've come up with to help them get on their way?
Well, I'll leave Hala talk a little bit about what we introduced this year with the investment advisory service, and then I'll go next into how we managed to actually raise money for companies so fast, and what we're about as well.
Sure. So we haven't talked yet about Vested Summit, which is our flagship annual event that happens originally in Egypt, but now it's happening online next week. And this is like where our community comes together, and we bring in investors and the startups and all the ecosystem players together as a community building exercise by Scale Up Ventures. But we realized through the 2 years of Vested Summit that the investments deals are not happening on ground during Vested Summit as we had wanted or thought would happen with the matchmaking process that we usually do during the summit. So when we dug deeper into why this is not the case, we realized that investors are thinking the startups are not ready enough for investment, and they need more hands-on work, basically, to get them at a stage where they are comfortable enough to put their money. So we just started off this, like we saw this gap, and we started off this program of startup advisory services, where we become, let's call it like a second hand to them, or an extended team to them, and we dig deeper into their financials and into their business models, and we make sure that they're telling their story properly, because a lot of the founders, they're engineers, they're techies, they just like to work and focus on the product, and they are not really aligned like how they're supposed to sell themselves globally as well. So they always sell themselves short. So we kind of align all of this with them properly, and make them a little bit more applicable, what's it called, like likable, or a little bit more in an intrigued way by the
Huh?
investors.
Mm-hmm.
And then we create a pitch night for them, and we invite all the angel investors out there to meet the founders, and not only that, we also create a digital pitch deck for them. So we revolutionize the way the pitch decks are made, because it's so boring for the investor, and it's just, you know, that the information that they need to find, it's not there. They kind of try to look at it, and they lose a lot of time and their effort in finding it. So we kind of craft all the story in a digital pitch deck, and then everything is there for the investor to make it easier for him to take a decision. And we also help with the legalities of the company as well, and help them set up in the right, like if they need to offshore somewhere, we also advise on that level, where and how, because if you're bringing in global investors and you're trying to actually create that traction between the investors in the emerging market talent and the startups here, then there has to be some kind of another startup setup where the found, or where the investor is comfortable with. So yeah, and then we started getting the crowd into the equation, and this is the new part as well, because basically all the crowd have savings somewhere, and they are interested in also building the future, and having a say in what like their next generations are going to be dealing with, what technology they're going to be seeing. So we started involving the crowd in investment opportunities.
So Salma, how many companies have you supported to date? How many startups have you worked with?
We've supported over the past 3 years 120 startups, and as Hala said, that we've seen that, like, even though we've supported them with Vested Summit, after Vested Summit, putting them in touch with a lot of organizations, the investments weren't happening, as you said, because the VCs aren't that ready for impact. And I think the hack that we did was that basically we wanted to package the startups as if it's actually a normal, regular startup, rather than actually just selling it as, impact or social enterprise for like a fund. So what we've done is basically we've really cleaned up we go in, we become their hands, their hands and support, and we basically build them something that's exciting for investors to go through, because we have that knowledge. So it's something that's a lot more intriguing to the investor. But the other thing is that, I say that this year, especially, we're living the consequences of a lot of unconscious decisions of a few people around the world. And it's time, I think, for the crowd to rise and have a lot of power. And I think maybe it might be too much of a risk for someone to put $100,000 or $150,000 in an early stage startup. But if you actually divide that into 5,000 portions, where it's really becoming a really small ticket size, that if you lose it, I think you're going to be okay with it, because you're going to make that back somehow. And if you actually also like get returns, then that's great, but it's divided over a lot of people. So the hack that we've done is that we've launched an angel syndicate, and that angel syndicate allows anyone around the world to be investing in the things that they love to actually see being built in the world, and really bring that power back to the people again, to the crowd, and have them have a say in what gets to be built and what gets to be done. And that way we've expedited a lot of so we've had successes with 2 startups as right now that we actually are investing in, and we have a pipeline of 10 more startups that we're working with the same way, and we've managed to raise this money for them in I think maybe between 1 and 3 months, which is really an ordeal amount of time, given that rounds of funding do take a lot of time, and I'm talking about ticket sizes between $500,000 all the way to like $1.5 million. So these are not really small ticket sizes, but when you divide that in like small portions, and have a lot of people have stake in that, I think that that's kind of like the winner, and it's getting a lot of people's money where their mouth is, I guess.
Yeah. So
Mark,
for people who are
like,
interested in participating in this platform, where should they go?
So we're launching CrowdWealth. So right now we used to like build just a digital pitch decks for the startups on ScaleUp Ventures. So it's the company.scaleupventures.com. But right now we've also built out our own digital platform that's crowdwealth.co. That all of these amazing startups and founders are actually going to be on there, and they can go in and register and find interesting and intriguing, exciting investments.
Oh, fantastic. So what kind of startups could I expect to see? What kind of what kinds of challenges are they working on, or solutions are they focused on?
Well, it's everything from digital transformation for SMEs to agri-tech, something that's making organic economical, so that we don't eat cancerous food. So there's this Egyptian startup that we're really excited about that's actually making organic fertilizers out of shrimp waste. And they have a patent, and they're actually right now exporting as well around the world, using their technology. And it all boiled down from like, they went to a lake to like find, and it was an environmental challenge really that one of the NGOs put up, which was basically that there was a lot of shrimp waste, and what could we do with the shrimp waste that was basically making a lot of people's health in this village really decline, and it was causing a lot of environmental challenges. So they were asked, these young engineers, they were asked to go there to try and find applications. And they actually invented the whole process of extracting this, what they call chitosan, which is like a biotechnology company, a material that basically could be used in agriculture that would 10x the yield from one single farm, and then also would be economical as a product versus using chemicals. So that's one. We do have everything from like blockchain, real estate, crowd financing, to what else, Hala?
Hospitals, the platform for the hospitals as well.
Patient management systems. What else? And it's like a sensor for natural gas, so that if you have that detects that in really good precision, so you don't have a lot of damages if there's a leakage. So we work with a lot of innovators and across stages, really, from pre-seed all the way, like from just ideas all the way to someone that's actually raising growth capital. There's one company that's raising a Series B that we're also helping support at the moment. Yeah. So we do work across stages as well. It's really about the founders and the challenges that they're addressing, and how can we also add value.
Yeah. So it sounds like I'm thinking of, here's this population, half the population's under 30. There must be so much energy to change things. Yeah.
Yes.
And I would imagine that energy, because there's so many educated young people in the Middle East, right? Who have struggled to get employment. Is entrepreneurship increasingly becoming an attractive path for them to go in and say, okay, if I can't get a job in a traditional company, maybe I should go out on my own?
Absolutely. It is, and it may be more than it should be, but that a lot of people are thinking they need to do that because there is a lot of pressure, societal wise and peer pressure, to actually start something on your own. Maybe they relate that to kind of like their self-fulfillment, let's say, that they want more freedom, and that's like the generation as well, the needs of this generation, that they don't want to be confined in a space or confined within a particular organization. They want to see the impact of what they're doing, like end to end. So they don't want to just be stuck in a particular role where they are just seeing the effect, or not even an effect, but just doing this role without seeing the overall cycle and the effect of that on the society. So there is definitely hype in starting businesses for sure.
Yeah. So Selma, you're such a pioneer because you came to Silicon Valley, you did your master's degree, you got immersed in, the process and the culture and how do you pitch and what do startups look like and what the effort is. And you go like, oh, okay, there's this entire region that everybody just, eats, drinks, and sleeps entrepreneurship and startup ideas. And I'm sure you saw many ideas that just never went anywhere. They were just failed attempts. But coming then and saying, okay, now that I've been immersed in this process, I can then import it into MENA, right? Because you actually lived it in San Francisco. And then start planting those seeds, because these things do take times, right? If you can stay at it long enough, right, you can actually begin to see these things flower, because you're just going out there and you just keep on repeating and repeating and repeating, and then you become the thought leaders, right? And just going in
Right.
and saying, I'm going to be the first to do it. It doesn't matter that nobody else is doing it. Somebody's got to start it. I'm going to be the one to start it. And that takes a lot of vision and a lot of stamina, right? Because you have to stick with
Thank
it.
you, Margarita. Especially coming from you, I mean, I'm really humbled.
Yeah, no, it's just been such a privilege to watch your evolution and your personal growth in all this, because there are setbacks, and it's one of those things that you talk about over a glass of wine and we go like, oh, it was so hard. Everybody, here's the thing for the listeners, everybody has those stories where we have the ugly cry, where it just didn't work, where you just kind of going, why am I doing this?
Yes,
And then
yes.
And then the next week you meet someone and then you get your energy back and you remember why you started this, because it really was about creating something that was bigger than yourself.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think I think um, I was really trying to answer that question throughout my life, is why me? Because, I think my life could have been something completely different. I mean, again, if people would ask you, like, what would you tell your 7-year-old that would shock her? I think most of my life would just like put her in tears, would be like, no way, I would never do that. That 7-year-old girl from, from Cairo, didn't really envision this, leader, a young leader inside of her. I didn't feel it. I mean, I didn't feel it coming, but I think it's, the little steps that count. It's every day, going all the way to Palo Alto to talk, or and then meeting you and meeting Mark. And I remember that, like, when Jeff Saperstein, the professor, took us to Stanford, I kept on emailing you like 4 or 5 times after coming back,
Yeah.
because you had like busy schedules and everything, and I wanted to like work with you. And something that you don't know, maybe, that I actually had plans to go to Shanghai, to our Shanghai campus, the health campus. And when I got the internship at Stanford, I was like, no, Shanghai, I'm not moving. I am sitting here doing this internship. So it's all of these like small little steps that all add up at some point in time. And again, like Steve Jobs says, you cannot connect the dots forwards. You can only connect them backwards. And I think now it makes sense. But at that time, I was a nutcase going from one event to the other with all of these building this massive network that I did not know what I was actually going to do with it. It's just, I was so inspired and fueled by all of these conversations that I was having with people from one event to the other, that pushed me forward to help me realize like why I'm here, how am I going to like help. And I think I felt so much privileged that like I could not not raise my hands and say,
Mhm,
yes,
mhm,
I want to do something. Because, I could have, I mean, I have a lot of friends that tell me like, you could have just settled for like a Facebook or a Google job or something and stayed right there. And then why did you
mhm,
choose this path? And I would say it's just so much more fulfilling, so much more rewarding to be doing something that really means that much to you, and to be bringing that forth that others might not be able to even see.
mhm.
So that's kind of like why I wake up every day. Is every single day I walk in the streets and I feel like I live between worlds, Margarita.
Yeah.
Because I go down in Silicon Valley and I see those robots being like tested in the streets, and then I come
Mhm,
here and then I see a donkey on a cart and some street seller trying to sell watermelon or something, and I'm like, wow, did I just
mhm.
time travel?
Yeah, yeah.
And
And those robots are being tested in my neighborhood. Because I live right next to Stanford, and so all the little, the little boxes on wheels that are just being tested, that and all the autonomous vehicles, I swear, they're all being tested in my neighborhood. Constantly seeing them there. They're gonna know
and I
College
think,
Terrace better than any neighborhood on the planet. They know those streets,
wow,
every little bump.
that's funny.
Intelligent ones.
I definitely. I mean, we're weaving this collective super brain together around the world. But I think that the one thing that we would never, that robots would never do, that's actually better than us, is that our heart, is that we have to remember who we are as humans, and
Mhm.
that we have to feel and connect with one another, and it just doesn't feel right when you time travel, and there's just so much potential and so much technology, and that the
Mhm.
future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed yet. So what we're trying to do here, and the work you also do, is really trying to distribute the future and build it even more exponentially.
So I will be watching you guys very closely in the years to come, because hopefully the kind of technology innovation and social impact that you bring to the MENA region will be one that actually fulfills the dream that many innovators have of actually lifting everyone up, right? And certainly in the Valley, one of the things that we got caught up in the last 15 years are these business models, because everyone wanted a unicorn. And so it was all about return on investment, not really thinking about, is this is this company lifting people up, not even, or even just um, creating a company that provided a living wage for people, right? So if we can move away from models that are exploitative and extractive, but rather technology that augments people's ability to thrive, and if you can do that, that will have such an impact, Sama, because you're going to say, look, that Silicon Valley, that was 1.0, this is 2.0 or 3.0. We're doing it so differently now. We've learned from the mistakes of the past. We don't want to replicate that because we can see the problems that it created, but we want to take the best of it and put, you know really localize it so that it meaningfully improves people's lives in the Middle East.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, what's the point of
I
creating
love that.
unicorn that employs 15 people and then everyone else is still unemployed? Like, so what? You know,
I love
at
that.
least
I
to
love that. I
me.
love
Mm.
I love how you say that. Basically, it's like, this was version 1 2.0. Silicon Valley was version 1 2.0, and there's like 2.0 and 3.0 being built elsewhere. Because I would say a lot of people would say that you're a contrarian right there and then. Because I meet people in the Valley all the time, and they think nothing else is happening outside this radius.
Hmm.
So it means a lot for you to acknowledge that there's a movement happening elsewhere as well.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you one last question before we wrapped up, or at least two. One is, there's been some thinking, is like trying to forward think into, like, what is life going to be like after COVID, right? Because it's been the entire year, and it's going to be part of next year as well, until vaccinations are widely distributed. But until then, we've had this year, and it'll be 18 months of a timeout, right? Where it isn't business as usual, where everything is disrupted. What do you think are the opportunities that the pandemic have created for you in your region? What do you think that you could say, like, okay, we've made a break from the past. What do we want the future to look like?
Can I jump in on that and
Of
Absolutely.
maybe
course.
start off with saying definitely that the internet being number one in the region now and having the remote kind of material or content being accepted by people all around from all social classes and all educational classes, that it's okay to get the online content and educational content through the internet. So I think that's one definitely important step forward for the emerging markets, or at least the Middle East, to kind of be ready for this kind of content and this kind of like shift of direction a little bit. And yeah, based on that, there's going to be a lot of changes in the infrastructure for sure, in the educational system, and how schools and universities are operating, and how teachers are operating, and the students and the culture within the class itself. So I think there's a lot of opportunity here to innovate and to get like all the creativity out to make
Mhm.
school feel like school again, but a little bit of
Uh-huh.
it is online for sure. Because like your best years are the school years and the university years, and now if it's online, a lot of us are like not liking that anymore, you know. So that's definitely one area where I see a lot of innovation coming in.
Mhm.
I think it freed up a lot of people's busy time. People used to like, let me just give you an example. In Cairo, if you'd like want to run an errand, it probably will take you an average of an hour and a half to just run one errand. And to be able to do that with just a few clicks, I think that's alleviating
Mhm.
people's quality of life and giving them back their time in order for them to spend it on more meaningful stuff, and then also giving them more mental space and emotional space to actually really ask the right kind of questions. That I think
Mhm.
it took me years and thousands of dollars to go to the valley to be able to figure that out, and I'm so
Mhm.
privileged to feel like I could do that. But then for people now to have for it to have freed up a little bit of their pent up time that they actually and pent up emotion that they had to deal with on the streets, in their day to day, in the office, all of these emotions that they have to face, and then being able to ask the right kind of questions. I think a lot of people are posing right now. It gave us the right kind of like pause to be able to really align with what we want to do in our future. And I think that it gave people the space to learn a new language, to
Mhm.
code that new project that they were actually putting on hold for a while, to read that book that they actually weren't reading,
Mhm.
and to connect with people in a more meaningful way online. And because we are social animals at the end of the day, so and really to be able to get a yoga class by one of the best yoga teachers in the world, or watch a Stanford course all the way from your bedroom, is
Mhm.
something that is really powerful, and it's going to make the world more smaller, um,
Mhm.
more intimate place, that I think the whole world needs, not just the MENA region. I think that MENA region particularly, um, there's a lot of people that had to face depression, emotional traumas leading to um, their loss of jobs or lack of security, and it's letting people ask those questions to be able
Mhm.
to build even a more sustainable future for themselves. So I think it's actually moving more and more people into aligning with who they are as people. I think
Yeah.
2020 was a transformation killer year. I like
Yeah.
it.
Oh,
I personally like
absolutely.
it.
It was challenging for so many people, who were just trying to survive. other people who had more cushion, who were more advantaged, it gave them a timeout to reassess what they're doing. So I think that I think that there was also an opportunity for a lot of personal transformation.
Yes.
If you were able to actually, whether you wanted it to happen or not, by the way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was enforced.
It's like the universe is saying, like, I'm telling you to slow down. And I expect that. Yes, go ahead, Hala.
Yeah, we know, Margarita, was just to point out on that I sometimes during the pandemic, I was asking myself if they had just given us this extra step where they would just cut off the internet as well. And where we are not even connected to anyone, even online, because sometimes I ask is if being connected online like that is distracting us from going inwards. Like, of course, like there was a lot of other distractions outside, like when we were going outside before the pandemic and everything. So this was taken away, but even imagine if the internet as well was taken away and you just get to sit alone with yourself. You have nothing to do for 3 months except
the mental health pressures have been extraordinary, right? As the stress of the uncertainty, but as many people have pointed out, Shakespeare, Isaac Newton, all the great inventions, plays, art, and so on came out of periods of plague and pandemic, right? So but there's going to be, we won't know until we look back what new creative thing came out of this period.
Yes.
But
and I think it's going to come out of from this part of the world as well, because this part of the world has gone through so many shocks. I think maybe the rest of the world, this is the first time they ever find this, but like to us, I think this is like, that's why we're telling you, like, there's no COVID here, just because we've lived the revolution, we've lived these things, we've lived economic crises that were so. We've lived the inflation. I mean, the deflation rate that like happened, the devaluation of the Egyptian currency when it was devalued a couple of years ago. So it was like one shock after the other over the past 10 years. That COVID is like, oh.
Whatever.
Like, cherry on top. So I think that people were a lot more mentally prepared over here and emotionally prepared than other places around the world for this kind of like, scare that it's just, didn't have that much of an impact, I would say, a long-term impact than other places around the world. And that's why I'm saying that the entrepreneurs over here are maybe better equipped for something to really break through.
You're not easily scared or intimidated.
Absolutely not. She's not. She's like a train. No, I salute her. I salute her for that.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been such a pleasure talking to both of you. So wanted to close like the 3 things question. 3 things that the listener should learn from you, change, or do, as a result of listening to this conversation.
Okay, I'll go first. I think learn about conscious tech and generally conscious investing, that investing consciously is the way forward for sure. And maybe also leading from the heart, like leading your life or leading your team, leading your company from the heart, I think is the way forward. And it's actually more powerful, much more powerful to lead from the heart than from the mind. And I think just create your own path in a way, like don't conform for sure. And that's how you're going to self-express. That's how you're going to be fulfilled. Yeah.
Fantastic. Salma, I'll let you have the last word.
I think that people need to learn a bit more about themselves. So I think if there's anything I've learned throughout the past, this whole journey since 2011 till now, has been that I somehow started to be my own best friend, learn about what my likes and my dislikes are, learn about my beliefs, be stronger, come stronger with life, come more alive. mean, even with the
Mhm.
red hair,
Yeah.
I express myself a lot more boldly and lively because I know who I am as a person. So I think it's really about finding yourself. Really, it's a journey of getting lost, but then finding your home. And that home is a mental and heart space that if you find it, you feel like you've untapped this, infinite potential of possibilities of who you can become, and you actually start admiring uncertainties. They start being more of an adventure. You start being more of a wanderer. So that's kind of like what they need to learn. What they need to do is be themselves. I second Hala. Stop listening. I think this generation, uh, we're gonna uh, we're gonna live the effects, Margarita, of so much noise, so many people trying to kind of like make someone do something.
Mhm.
There's social media is coming at you with all these messages. There's media is trying to tell you something else. There's peer pressures in school. There's bullying. There's all of these things that are actually asking, that are like noises that are getting louder and louder and louder. And the only
Mhm.
way to deal with those noises is to just shut them down and be yourself, is to have that voice of your inner wisdom be the guide of your own life.
Mhm.
So if I'd ask them to be one thing, is to be themselves, and no matter how many other people disagree with or are not
Mhm.
accepting, and this is the only way they'll be able to live a more meaningful, a more happy life. And who knows, maybe they'll be the next Einstein
Yeah.
or the next um, someone in doing that, because all of these people have one thing in common, which is that they listen to themselves.
Fantastic. I think that's a wonderful message for all our listeners. Thank you so much. So, Vested Summit is next week. Is it next week?
Uh-huh.
And
Yes.
5th
online,
and 6th of December, yeah.
5th and 6th of December. Oh my gosh, we're already at the end of November. How did that happen?
I know. We're already at the end of the year, Margarita.
I
It's just
know, I know, I know, I know, I know. It's such a pleasure talking to both of you. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you. Thank you,
thank
Margarita.
you so much,
Pleasure.
Margarita.
Thank you.